Every gamer has their favorite game, the one they keep coming back to over and over again. Everyone also has their own reason for loving Minecraft. Some have spent years immersed in hardcore survival. While others build entire cities in creative mode. Then there are those who prefer minigames on servers, like Bed Wars. Some players install dozens of mods and battle creatures from the backrooms, armed with all kinds of weapons. And that's just a small fraction of what Minecraft has to offer. Without a doubt, it's the greatest sandbox game, and perhaps even the best game ever. My journey with Minecraft began during the alpha version, and the legend of Herobrine was born. Back then, many believed in Herobrine, feared him, and the bravest tried to summon him. Later, the official release of Minecraft happened, followed by Microsoft's acquisition of Mojang. Notch, aka Marcus Persson, the game's creator, stepped away from the project. The internet buzzed with claims that Minecraft is officially dead, but the game didn't disappear. In fact, in some ways, it became even better. Sure, the Bedrock version introduced paid skins and maps, but who cares? Say what you will, but I think Microsoft brought us some amazing updates. The combat update, aquatic update, and village and pillage update. And Mojang didn't stop there, continuing to release one massive update after another. The Nether update, the Caves and Cliffs update, and even the Frog update, though the latter can't really be called major. In truth, after the Caves and Cliffs update, the pace slowed down a bit. There haven't been any major updates since then, and it seems like none are on the horizon. However, several spin-offs have emerged, and a full-length Minecraft movie is on the way. Let's take a closer look at how Minecraft has evolved, what spin-offs have been introduced, and whether there's an actual storyline in this game. Does Minecraft have a storyline? The answer depends on how we define the term storyline. If we're talking about a traditional campaign, then no, Minecraft doesn't have one. There are no cutscenes, dialogues, or clearly scripted events. Although, to be fair, at the very end of the game, there is an abstract conversation between two unknown entities discussing the player's actions. But if we're referring to lore, the backstory and inner workings of this blocky reality, things get much more interesting. A quick disclaimer: most of what I'm about to share consists of fan theories. It's a situation similar to FNAF. The developers don't confirm the theories and leave us to piece things together on our own. As a result, every player ends up with their own personal version of the story. If my interpretation doesn't align with yours, please don't be upset. Now let's dive into my theory. What kind of world is Minecraft? It's blocky, beautiful, and diverse. Real-world animals like foxes and wolves coexist with undead creatures such as skeletons and zombies. Meanwhile, beings from other dimensions resemble extraterrestrials. At first glance, it seems like anything can exist in Minecraft. It is a sandbox after all. But if you look closely, patterns start to emerge. Why are certain items or mobs included in vanilla Minecraft while others are not? When does the game take place? It's often assumed to be set in a medieval era. We have swords, bows, and arrows, and the villagers live in small settlements, engaging in farming, animal husbandry, and blacksmithing. The presence of magic further reinforces the classic fantasy vibe. But then we have redstone, pistons, electric lamps, powered rails, daylight sensors. Even a single electric lamp hints that this isn't purely a medieval world. And where do we find all these redstone technologies? In ruins. Lamps can be found in ancient cities, pistons in jungle temples, and copper-powered lamps in trial chambers. All these places are abandoned. Meanwhile, the homes of Minecraft's modern inhabitants, villagers and pillagers, lack such technologies. What conclusion can we draw? At some point, Minecraft's world was home to a more advanced civilization. Its remnants are scattered across the ruins found throughout the game. However, that civilization vanished, and in its place came the nosy villagers, whose development level remains firmly in the medieval era. However, why is the world populated exclusively by nosy villagers? Where is the settlement of humans? Let's call it, hypothetically, the civilization of Steves. If we focus on single-player mode, Steve stands alone, truly one of a kind. If Notch had intended for us to believe that Steve wasn't unique, why didn't they create NPCs resembling Steve or other human-like characters? The absence of such NPCs implies that Steve really is the only one of his kind. On top of that, compared to the frail villagers, Steve is practically a superhuman. For context, Steve can lift a staggering 45,000 tons if he fills his inventory with gold blocks. Furthermore, Steve possesses ancient knowledge and crafts items not even found in ruins, like the daylight sensor or netherite. Take netherite as an example. It's crafted from ancient debris of some bygone civilization. The very process of creating netherite armor feels like rediscovering a lost technology, one beyond the capabilities of any current mob. If mobs could create netherite, piglins would surely flaunt it, wouldn't they? Interestingly, mobs can spawn wearing all types of armor: leather, chainmail, iron, gold, and even diamond, but never netherite. This suggests that among all the beings inhabiting the overworld, Nether, and End, Steve alone understands the ancient netherite technology. But what if Steve knows about this technology because he's part of that ancient civilization? Consider this. How does Steve even invent items he shouldn't know about? When he finds ancient debris, he instinctively recognizes it. To us, it's just pixelated blocks. But to Steve, it looks like remnants of something meaningful. Think about it. If you showed a primitive human a smartphone, they might think it's just a shiny object, without understanding its purpose. But Steve looks at ancient debris and inherently knows what it is and how it might work. This implies he's a remnant of a highly advanced, ancient civilization. But where are his kin? The answer lies quite literally on the surface. The undead mobs, hostile zombies, and skeletons, with body structures identical to Steve's, could very well be his lost kin. They often inhabit abandoned temples, mines, and ruins, perhaps drawn to something familiar. While skeletons might be explained by necromancy, zombies are more intriguing. They aren't magically reanimated corpses, but victims of a virus, the zombie virus, capable of infecting not just Steve's, but villagers, piglins, and hoglins too. It's possible this very virus wiped out the entire Steve civilization. As for how this virus originated, that remains a mystery. One of the most popular theories links the zombie virus to meteorites that pierced the Earth and embedded themselves deep underground. It's possible that these celestial objects carried the virus, which later began infecting living organisms. 2. A virus from the Skulk dimension. The spreading nature of the Skulk across blocks bears a striking resemblance to the concept of a zombie virus infection. Perhaps the virus infiltrated the Minecraft world from another dimension connected to the Skulk. The Wardens, guarding the Skulk, might be protectors attempting to prevent the further spread of this menace. This theory hinges on the parallels between the mechanics of infection. Just as the Skulk absorbs its surroundings, the virus converts living beings into zombies. 3. Alien invasion. The idea that the zombie virus was created by aliens may sound outlandish, but it has its own logic. If we assume that a highly advanced alien civilization intended to colonize the Minecraft world, deploying a zombie virus would be an effective tactic. The aliens could have used the virus to eliminate intelligent beings while leaving nature intact. Humans turned into zombies lose their ability for complex thought and can no longer resist invaders. Once the virus wipes out civilization, the aliens could easily settle on the planet. This theory echoes the premise of The Walking Dead, where the zombie virus was suggested to have been brought by aliens. And 4. This hypothesis suggests that the Steve civilization created a virus that led to the downfall of their people. This version is based on the assumption that the Steves had incredibly advanced technologies, including the ability to conduct complex biological research. But what might have happened to cause this catastrophe? According to my theory, the Steve civilization was initially the only intelligent one across all 3 dimensions. That is, no villagers, no piglins, no Endermen, only Steves. They primarily lived in the overworld, but occasionally ventured into the Nether for research purposes or resource gathering. As I imagine it, their world featured massive metropolises, factories, machines, airplanes, spacecraft, and other marvels of scientific progress, and also went to Nether for research and resource extraction. However, at some point, there was an incident in one of their biolabs, perhaps a leak, or maybe an unwitting Steve ate a bat. Boom. A zombie virus overtook the entire world. It's highly likely that the infection wasn't transmitted through bites, but rather airborne, spreading like a force of nature. Humanity couldn't cope with it. In just a matter of days, or perhaps even hours, the virus wiped out the entire civilization. Yet, the will to survive among the Steves was strong, and some managed to endure. Each of them survived in their own way. The first group of surviving Steves left their ruined planet and journeyed into space. They were perhaps seeking refuge or new resources to sustain their existence. Eventually, they discovered mysterious flying islands, which would later become known as the End. One of the strongest pieces of evidence supporting the theory that it was the Steves who ended up in the End are the sets of armor that can be found in the End City. Endermen did not wear armor, as their size and body shape were completely incompatible with it. This is clear evidence that the armor was worn by Steves. There were no Endermen in the End at first, and if they appeared later, it was likely due to genetic changes in the surviving Steves. One of the most intriguing aspects is the connection between the Steves and the dragons, which were likely the primary fauna of the End. The Steves, acting as mercenaries or explorers, might have used their flying spaceships to hunt these creatures. The decapitated dragon heads were used as trophies, mounted on the front of the ships, symbolizing their victory and assertion of dominance. This behavior is characteristic of those who have grown accustomed to dominating nature and its creatures. When the last dragon was killed, the Steves likely realized that they had destroyed the final source of food and connection to nature. In an effort to preserve at least one dragon for the future, they connected it to a life-supporting machine. The pillars with crystals, which healed the dragon, were part of this system that kept it alive and allowed it to survive in the harsh conditions of the End. The food that the Steves could eat ran out, and survival without resources became impossible. At first, they began to use the local chorus fruit, which not only satisfied their hunger, but also had teleportation properties. However, as with many known scientific experiments, the consequences of consuming foreign food were disastrous. Over time, the Steves' bodies began to change. Their skin turned dark, and their limbs stretched out. They were no longer the humans they once were. The Steves gradually lost their humanity. The mutations resulted from consuming local food, which affected their DNA. They were no longer the beings they had been before the fall of their civilization. The Steves became part of the End, no longer merely its explorers, as they had been at the start. The second group of surviving Steves, after the destruction of their civilization, headed to the Nether, as this dimension was already familiar to them and more hospitable than the End. In the Nether, they could grow trees, and edible mushrooms and other resources supported their survival. The Steves even managed to bring animals into the Nether, possibly for scientific research or sustenance. Most importantly, the hot air of the Nether prevented the zombie virus from spreading, giving the brightest minds among the Steves the opportunity to work on developing a vaccine. After extensive research, the Steves concluded that the pig genome was the least susceptible to the zombie virus. They developed a vaccine based on pig genetics, hoping it would protect them from infection. However, the experiment backfired. Instead of immunity, the Steves began mutating in pigmen. The mutation not only caused external changes, but also resulted in reduced intelligence, making the piglins more aggressive. This sparked a war between the remaining Steves and the newly mutated piglins. Scientific facilities were raided, and piglins seized advanced weaponry, potentially including nuclear technology. With areas like the basalt deltas, the strange Geiger counter-like sounds could hint at the residual radiation left by such weapons, serving as evidence of these catastrophic events. The Wither skeletons are most likely the Steves who were caught in the middle of the blast. During the attacks on biolaboratories, piglins accidentally released new viruses. These pathogens continued to alter the DNA of creatures in the Nether, leading to the emergence of horrifying mutants such as ghasts and striders. The continuous mixing of DNA and viral mutations turned the Nether's ecosystem into a twisted amalgamation of chaos. It's possible that the viral mutations also affected pigs, resulting in the creation of hoglins. When hoglins crossed into the overworld, they transformed into zoglins, possibly due to further genetic instability caused by the viruses. This tragic transformation led to a grim cycle of cannibalism among the piglins, as hoglins began attacking their own kind. In early versions of Minecraft Pocket Edition, under Notch's leadership, there was a feature called the Nether Reactor. This structure allowed players to simulate the Nether's environment, as Nether portals were not yet implemented. The reactor created a crust of netherrack and summoned zombie pigmen. This could be seen as a prototype or an early experiment by the Steves to replicate Nether conditions, indirectly contributing to the creation of its flora and fauna. The Steves' relentless pursuit of scientific progress led to irreversible consequences, turning the Nether into a literal hellscape. Their attempts to preserve life only accelerated its destruction. The texture of netherrack, with its red, veiny patterns, may not merely be decorative, but could symbolize blood, hinting at the immense slaughter and devastation that occurred. The abundance of soul sand might serve as a grim reminder of the countless lives lost during the war and genocide. The piglins, having lost their human nature and embraced primitive values like cruelty and greed for gold, became the rulers of the Nether. Though it became their home, the Nether was no longer a place of peace or safety, but a haunting reminder of the tragedy that befell the Steves' once great civilization. The third group of Steves, instead of seeking refuge in other dimensions, chose to stay in the overworld and wait out the zombie virus epidemic in specially constructed underground bunkers. These bunkers might be the precursors to the trial chambers. With solid foundations and sealed entrances, these structures were clearly designed for isolation rather than open use. Inside, they included water sources, spaces for growing trees, and multiple beds, making them resemble military barracks. To maintain combat readiness, the bunkers were equipped with mob spawners, allowing the surviving Steves to train regularly. Years turned into decades, and possibly even millennia. Prolonged time spent underground caused their skin to pale and turn gray. Small amounts of air from the overworld seeped into the bunkers, gradually helping the Steves develop a natural immunity to the zombie virus. This adaptation might have been facilitated by their altered anatomy, most notably an enlarged nose, which acted as a natural filter for purifying contaminated air. The air, heated as it passed through their nasal passages, likely neutralized the virus. Although they underwent significant physical changes, these Steves retained their humanity. Over time, they evolved into a new group known as the Illagers. Contrary to popular belief, it's possible that Illagers were the first descendants of the Steves, not the villagers. While the Illagers hid in their bunkers, chaos engulfed the Nether. Steves who mutated into Endermans over time developed unique abilities, such as teleportation between dimensions. Despite their physical transformation, they retained their intellect and consciousness, which allowed them to reflect on the mistakes of their civilization. They observed how advanced technology had led to the downfall of the Steves in the overworld, unleashed mutations and havoc in the Nether, and realized that Illagers were treading a similar path. To prevent future generations from repeating these mistakes, the Enderman decided to eradicate all traces of advanced technology. The Enderman began dismantling factories, structures, and reactors, teleporting blocks to the end, where they were discarded into the void. This monumental undertaking necessitated the creation of end portals, designed to accommodate the Enderman's height of 3 blocks. Unlike nether portals, the end portals could not be crafted by Steves, underscoring that they were a creation of the Enderman, designed long after the zombie virus emerged. The process was systematic. An Enderman would pick up a block, teleport to the portal, pass through to the end, dispose of the block in the void, and return for the next. As a result, cities, factories, and technological marvels vanished from the overworld, leaving behind only nature and ruins like abandoned mines and temples, which were deemed irrelevant to their mission. The overworld's ecosystem began to recover. Oxygen levels in the atmosphere increased, leading to the growth of giant insects, similar to Earth's Carboniferous period 300 million years ago. This explains the existence of creatures like Minecraft's oversized bees, spiders, and silverfish, which symbolize a revitalized and purified environment. After millennia in isolation, the Illagers emerged to the surface, where they were greeted by a renewed and cleansed world. However, much of their knowledge of technology had been lost, and they found it suspicious that no traces of their ancestors' civilization remained on the surface. While exploring the world, they noticed Endermen carrying blocks. By following one, they stumbled upon a portal to the end. Curious to investigate, they built a stronghold around the portal. This structure, with its prison cells, iron doors, and levers, reflects the architectural style of the Illagers, resembling elements of their mansions. Their knowledge was primitive, but mechanisms like buttons and levers were still within their grasp. The Illagers' goal in the stronghold was straightforward: to study the portal and uncover its secrets. They gathered their knowledge, recording it in numerous books stored in the massive libraries within the stronghold. This same thirst for knowledge can be seen in their mansions, which also house libraries, and in one room, even a wool replica of a portal to the end. This could indicate that they tried to understand the portal's workings before activating it. Did they manage to reach the end before the protagonist? Most likely not. The portal in the stronghold remained inactive, and leaving the end without defeating the dragon is impossible. The Endermen clearly disapproved of the Illagers' presence near the portal. Their mission is to preserve nature and eliminate traces of technology, and the aggressive, nose-bearing people posed a threat to these plans. The Endermen placed a silverfish spawner near the portal. These creatures attacked suddenly, biting and emerging from unexpected places, forcing the Illagers to abandon the stronghold in haste. The Illagers relocated to their mansions, where they continued their scientific endeavors. Their motivation was clear: to reclaim their former glory and dominate this new world, just as their Steve ancestors once ruled the planet. Meanwhile, a new group emerged on the surface, the villagers, who chose a completely different path. Tired of wars and technology, they decided to live in harmony with nature. They began building villages, farming, and spending more time outdoors. As a result, their skin gradually regained its natural color. The villagers began to focus more on their spiritual lives. Every village has a temple and a cleric, which indicates the development of religion and philosophy. Perhaps faith helped the villagers concentrate on the simple joys of life and abandon ambitions to revive technology or magic. The human world split into two camps: Illagers, who strive to rebuild their civilization, study science and the art of war, and villagers, who chose a simpler life, focusing on nature, religion, and mutual aid. It is during this period of division that our protagonist, Steve, appears. But who is Steve? He is the main character of Minecraft, raises many questions regarding his origin. Steve's attire, a blue shirt and blue pants, is similar to the clothing of zombies, which could suggest two possible scenarios. Steve could be a representative of an ancient civilization before the outbreak of the zombie virus, and his clothing could be a relic of the past. Or Steve could be a cured zombie who was infected with the virus but somehow healed and became human again. Another piece of evidence linking Steve to zombies is his reaction to rotten flesh. When an ordinary person eats rotten flesh, it causes poisoning, but Steve feels hunger, as if his body remembers the time when he consumed it as a zombie. This could be an involuntary nostalgia for his past, when he was part of the zombie horde, wandering the world and eating brains. In the game, we know that zombie villagers can be cured with a weakness potion and a golden apple, but it is important to note that regular zombies cannot be cured. Steve's cure most likely happened through a different method that we don't know about. This raises questions. Who could have cured Steve, and why?
I don't know.
This is still just a small part of the entire lore. We can also discuss the nature of magic in Minecraft, who the warden might be, and whether the underwater temple could possibly be a flying saucer. By the way, have you ever wondered where temple came from? I think the underwater monument isn't really a monument at all. It's an alien spaceship. Surprised? But this is no joke. Let's think about it. In the end, we encounter the end city, and it consists of blocks that can be crafted. The purple blocks are made from chorus flowers, and the bricks are made from endstone. All these blocks are gathered in the end. In the Nether, we find the Nether fortress, which is made of nether brick. All these bricks are crafted from blocks that are mined in the Nether. As for the overworld, it's all clear. The jungle temple is entirely made of blocks that the player can craft, except for the mossy cobblestone, which is naturally occurring. The desert pyramid is also made from blocks that can be crafted, just like the underground ancient city. And really, all structures consist of blocks that are gathered and crafted. What about prismarine, the material that the underwater temple is made of? This material is not found anywhere else in the world of Minecraft. If we consider the world as a planet, one might assume that prismarine is an extraterrestrial material only found in the temple. Interestingly, there is no real-world material called prismarine, although there is a geometric concept of a prism, which is used for light refraction. The underwater temple is inhabited by guardians, whose sole purpose is to protect the temple. They never leave its territory and will kill any creatures attempting to approach. They attack with lasers, and a laser is essentially concentrated light. If you think about it, lasers in real life work similarly. They heat up a point over time and then cause damage. The Guardian's attack resembles this because the light beam first heats up the target, then damages it, changing from purple to yellow. Perhaps its function is to refract light in order to create a powerful laser, which the Guardians use to defend the temple. The Guardians are also entirely made of prismarine, or more specifically, prismarine bricks. This can be seen in their texture, as well as in the shape of the Guardian itself, which, if deprived of its tail and spikes, looks cubic. The monument is also made of prismarine. Isn't it strange that both the monument and its Guardians are made from the same material? Could it be that the Guardians are not living creatures, but rather robots created for protection? Look at the regular creatures in Minecraft. They don't use weapons or defense. At most, they have primitive tools or magic. Steve can shoot a bow, fight with a sword, and wear armor, but Guardians use lasers and have spikes for protection, which pulse to repel enemies. They also don't die on land, unlike marine creatures. Perhaps their ability to constantly hop on land is due to the spikes constantly extending and retracting, and this is their only method of movement. Additionally, their sounds are mechanical, like those of robots. So, the Guardians are robots whose task is to guard their base. And the question arises, why do they even need this base? If we look at this from a science fiction perspective, one could assume that this base represents something more than just a storage place. In popular culture, as in books, games, and movies, aliens often visit Earth to gather information. Perhaps a spaceship landed on the planet where Steve lives, and this ship is inhabited only by robots, as there are no living beings on board. Interestingly, the underwater temple actually resembles a flying saucer resting on stands, and this analogy could very well be fitting. Let's imagine that the ship arrived on the planet to collect data, and now the question is, how do they transmit this data back across vast distances? Space is infinite, and transmitting information could take an incredibly long time. The most obvious method for quick data transmission is the speed of light. Now, let's focus on the temple itself. This spaceship is made of prismarine blocks, which are capable of refracting light. What if this is not just a structure, but a technological tool designed to speed up data transmission via light beams? The temple has a pyramid-like shape pointing upwards, and at its peak is a structure that is likely designed to direct these light beams. Did you know that prismarine blocks constantly shimmer, changing their light hues? Perhaps the information is stored in these blocks. It's like a sort of database, collecting data over a long period. Instead of transmitting this information through traditional methods, this spaceship uses prismarine to store and transmit data using light as the medium. All of this might be part of a more complex system, where the Guardians and their temple not only serve as protection, but also as data processors, transmitting information back from the planet through extraterrestrial means. You'll notice that for the average player, this temple doesn't offer much in terms of valuable research, as aside from the beautiful blocks and a few resources, it doesn't provide anything truly unique. The gold in the center of the temple is no more than a small resource that the player can take for themselves, but it's not worth the life or effort to destroy the entire temple. Aliens were clearly aware that their ship could be under threat, and perhaps that's why they sent a few robots to protect their base. However, their task isn't just to defend against players, but also to prevent looting. The Guardians apparently disperse a chemical composition or create a weakness effect to make it more difficult for the player to destroy the temple and steal its resources. This deterrent effect works as a kind of defense for this alien structure. But here's the interesting detail. Steve, as a player, has no idea that he's actually violating a foreign civilization. He simply sees the temple as a source of rare and valuable resources that he needs for crafting, ignoring all the technical or civilizational features of the place. His actions are more like vandalism, as he destroys an unfamiliar structure in search of loot, without considering its true purpose. The gold in the center of the temple also doesn't hold much value for Steve, as he doesn't realize it could be a key component for the operation of this structure. To him, it's just a source of resources, and what exactly lies at the center, whether it's a fuel tank, a central computer, or something else, doesn't matter. He acts based on his own benefit, but ultimately just destroys what he doesn't comprehend. As for why the aliens chose water for their base, this is quite logical. Water covers a large portion of the planet. Much like on Earth, water enables movement in any direction, including vertical and horizontal planes, which creates many tactical advantages for the aliens. On land, the aliens would have encountered limitations in mobility, including challenges in creating more secure bases or moving around. This was the first part. Soon I will make a video about the lore in the rest of the Minecraft games. Bye bye.